Cars honk. People rush by, avoiding a homeless man, Jack, mid-30s, unshaven, wearing tattered clothes, holding a cardboard sign, "Will work for food." Charles walks briskly down the city street, his leather shoes splashing through puddles. The noise of the city seems to recede into the background as his mind races. Deadlines loom, and his company teeters on the brink of a major deal that could make or break the fiscal year. As he reaches a crosswalk, his eyes meet Jack's. For a fleeting moment, Charles is reminded of a time when he wasn't so different from the man sitting on the sidewalk. The memory of his own humble beginnings, long hours, odd jobs, and a single lucky break flashes before him. He hesitates, then walks past, though the thought lingers. Inside a sleek coffee shop, Charles orders his usual an espresso, no sugar. He sits by the window, but his gaze drifts back to Jack. The man's sign is now soggy from the rain, and his head hangs low. Charles takes a sip, the coffee bitter, the taste matching his mood. Jack notices Charles watching. Their eyes lock again, and this time, Charles feels a pang of guilt. He finishes his coffee, gathers his things, and heads back outside, standing awkwardly in front of Jack. "Charles," awkwardly, "I can give you a job, if you're serious about working for food." Jack looks up, skepticism mixed with curiosity. "Jack," gruffly, "what kind of job?" Charles hesitates, "It's nothing fancy. Just helping around the office. Cleaning, organizing. You up for it?" Jack, after a pause, "Yeah. Yeah, I can do that." Charles extends a hand, helping Jack to his feet. As they walk, Jack looks around, almost bewildered by the turn his day has taken. Back at the office, Charles introduces Jack to his assistant, Amy, 30s, efficient and kind. She quickly finds tasks for Jack, who throws himself into the work with a vigor that surprises even himself. As the days pass, Jack cleans up both physically and metaphorically. He shaves, wears donated clothes, and begins to regain a sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Charles finds himself strangely motivated by Jack's presence, reminded of the value of hard work and second chances. Their unlikely friendship grows. Charles begins to see the world through Jack's eyes, gritty, raw, yet filled with resilience. In turn, Jack starts to believe in himself again, his confidence slowly rebuilding with each completed task and each day he spends away from the streets. One evening, as they lock up the office, Charles turns to Jack. "Charles, you've done good work, Jack. I want to offer you something more permanent." Jack, surprised, "A real job?" Charles, "A real job. Full-time. And if you're up for it, we can look into some housing options too." Jack's eyes fill with gratitude. Jack, voice trembling, I don't know what to say. "Thank you." Charles, smiling, "Just keep showing up. That's all I ask." Jack nods, a spark of hope igniting in his heart. Months later, Jack walks the same bustling streets, but this time, he's a man transformed. His stride is confident, his clothes clean and professional. As he passes a group of people rushing by, he pauses, noticing a young woman holding a sign, "Will work for food." Without hesitation, Jack approaches her, a sense of purpose in his step. "Jack," gently, "I might know someone who can help." The cycle of redemption continues, as one man's small act of kindness ripples out to change another life. The young woman, Lily, early 20s, looks up at Jack with wary eyes. She's been on the streets for weeks, her spirit worn down by rejection and the cold. Jack's offer feels too good to be true, but there's something genuine in his tone, something that suggests he understands her plight. Lily, skeptical, "Why would you help me?" Jack, with a warm smile, "Someone helped me when I was in your shoes. Now, I just want to pay it forward. If you're willing to try, there's a chance to turn things around." Lily glances down at her sign, then back at Jack. The hesitation is evident, but so is the flicker of hope in her eyes. "Lily, softly, okay? I'll give it a shot." Jack brings Lily to the office, where he now holds a stable position. He introduces her to AMY, who remembers Jack's beginnings and is more than willing to extend the same kindness. They set Lily up with small tasks, giving her a chance to acclimate and regain a sense of stability. As the weeks pass, Lily begins to flourish. With Jack's mentorship and the support of the office, she starts to rebuild her life. The change in her is palpable. Her posture straightens, her eyes brighten, and she begins to believe in herself once more. One evening, Charles calls Jack into his office. Charles has been observing Jack's efforts with Lily and is impressed. "Charles, Jack, I've been watching how you've helped Lily. You've shown real leadership. I think it's time we talked about your future here." Jack, taken aback, my future? Charles, nodding, I'd like to offer you a management position. You've got a natural ability to connect with people and help them grow. We could use more of that around here. Jack's heart swells with pride. The journey from the streets to this moment feels surreal, but the offer is real, and it's a testament to his hard work and the chance Charles once gave him. Jack, gratefully, I don't know what to say. Thank you, Charles. I won't let you down. Charles, smiling, I know you won't. Jack steps into his new role with confidence. He becomes a beacon of hope within the company, not just for those like Lily who come from difficult circumstances, but for everyone who sees what determination and kindness can achieve. Lily continues to grow under Jack's guidance. She finds her own place to live, takes night classes to further her education, and starts to dream again. One day, Jack and Lily sit together during lunch, reflecting on their journey. Lily, thoughtfully, do you think we can ever repay what Charles did for us? Jack, smiling, we already are. By helping others, by making the most of the chances we've been given. That's how we pay it forward. Lily nods, understanding the depth of Jack's words. They are both living proof that a single act of kindness can set off a chain reaction, changing lives in ways they never imagined. As they finish their meal, Jack notices a man outside the window holding a familiar sign, "Will work for food." Without a word, he and Lily exchange a glance, both knowing exactly what to do next. Together, they step outside, ready to offer another lifeline, continuing the cycle of compassion that once saved them both. Charles, still catching his breath, nods. Come on, he says, gesturing towards a nearby diner. Together, they head down the street, stepping into the warm, bustling diner. Charles and Jack sit across from each other at a small booth. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with a friendly smile, comes over to take their order. Waitress, what can I get you too? Charles, smiling. A couple of coffees and the biggest meals you've got. As the waitress leaves, Charles turns back to Jack, who is scanning the diner with cautious eyes. Charles, curious, so what brings you to that alley? Jack, after a pause, just passing through. Saw you in trouble. Charles, leaning in. You handled yourself like someone who's done this before. Jack, with a small smile. I've had some experience. Charles, well, thank you again. I don't even know your name. Jack, hesitant Jack. Charles. They shake hands, a brief but sincere gesture. The waitress returns with their food, and they dig in. Charles studies Jack between bites, curious about the man who had just saved him. Charles, so Jack, what's your story? Jack, shrugging, not much to tell. Just a guy trying to get by. Charles, probing, no family? No home. Jack's eyes darken slightly. He hesitates before answering. Jack, no. Not anymore. Charles, sympathetic, I'm sorry. Jack, softly, it's all right. Just life. They eat in silence for a moment. Charles considers his next words carefully. Charles, you know, if you're looking for work, I might have something for you. Jack looks up, interested. Jack, what kind of work? Charles, leaning in. I run a small security firm. Could use someone like you, someone who knows how to handle themselves. Jack thinks it over, clearly tempted but wary. Jack, after a pause, maybe. What's the catch? Charles, no catch. Just a job, if you want it. A chance to start over. Jack leans back, considering the offer. For the first time in a long while, he feels a spark of hope. Jack, all right. I'll think about it. Charles, smiling, fair enough. The two men finish their meal, a silent understanding forming between them. As they leave the diner, the night feels a little less dark, and both men feel like they've gained something. Charles, a protector, and Jack, a chance at a new beginning. Charles and Jack step out into the cool night air. The city hums around them, streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. They walk in companionable silence for a few moments before Charles speaks. Charles, where are you staying? Jack, shrugging, here and there. No permanent place. Charles frowns, then seems to make a decision. Charles, I've got a spare room. It's nothing fancy, but it's better than the street. Jack looks at him, a mix of gratitude and hesitation in his eyes. Jack, I don't want to impose. Charles, smiling, you saved my life. It's the least I can do. After a brief pause, Jack nods. Jack, all right. Just for a while. The apartment is modest but cozy. Charles opens the door, gesturing for Jack to enter. Jack steps inside, glancing around at the neatly kept space. Charles, make yourself at home. The spare room is down the hall. Jack sets down a small bag he's been carrying and follows Charles to the room. It's simple but clean, with a bed and a small dresser. Jack sets his bag down on the bed, turning to Charles. Jack, thank you. I appreciate it. Charles, smiling, it's no trouble. Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning. Jack nods, and Charles heads back down the hall. Jack closes the door, leaning against it for a moment. It's been a long time since he's had a place to stay, even temporarily. He lies down on the bed, staring at the ceiling, thoughts swirling. The smell of coffee and eggs drifts through the apartment. Jack wakes up, taking a moment to remember where he is. He gets up and heads to the kitchen, where Charles is cooking breakfast. Charles, morning. Hope you like eggs. Jack, smiling slightly, morning. Eggs are great. They sit down to eat, the atmosphere relaxed. As they finish, Charles leans forward. Charles, so about that job. Are you interested? Jack considers for a moment, then nods. Jack, yeah, I think I am. Charles, great. We can head to the office today, get you started. Jack, grateful. Thanks, Charles. For everything. Charles, smiling, just doing what's right. They share a nod of understanding. For both men, this feels like the start of something new, a chance to rebuild and move forward. As they prepare to leave, the city outside buzzes with life, and for the first time in a while, Jack feels like he might just belong. Jack sits nervously in a chair across from Charles's large mahogany desk. Charles leans back, studying Jack thoughtfully. Charles, you've got the grit, Jack. I see potential in you. What do you think about working in security? Jack straightens, his eyes shining with a mix of hope and disbelief. Jack, security? I've never done that before, but I'm willing to learn. Charles smiles, leaning forward. Charles, that's the spirit. I believe in giving people chances. All I need is your dedication and loyalty. Can I count on that? Jack nods vigorously. Jack, yes, sir. You won't regret it. Charles, good. Let's get you started. Jack is shown around by Sam, a seasoned security officer. They pass through various sections of the building, the hum of business around them. Sam, we'll start you on basic rounds, get you familiar with the place. Any questions so far? Jack, just one. Why does Charles take chances on guys like me? Sam chuckles, patting Jack on the back. Sam, he's got an eye for potential. Says he can see the fire in people's eyes. Maybe he saw it in you. Charles sits in his study, a fire crackling in the fireplace. Amelia, his wife, enters, bringing him a cup of tea. Amelia, you brought someone new into the company today? Charles takes the tea, smiling up at her. Charles, yes, a man named Jack. He's been through rough times, but I see something in him. Reminds me of myself when I was younger. Amelia, you've always had a soft spot for the underdog. Charles nods, gazing into the fire. Charles, sometimes all someone needs is a break. A chance to prove themselves. Jack is now fully integrated into his role, moving confidently through his rounds. He greets colleagues with a friendly smile, his posture more assured. Sam approaches him with a grin. Sam, you've come a long way, Jack. How does it feel? Jack, feels good. Like I've got a purpose again. Sam, that's what Charles does. Gives people their purpose back. Jack walks out of the building, head held high. Charles watches from his office window, a satisfied smile on his face. Charles, everyone deserves a second chance. And sometimes, those who have fallen are the ones who rise the highest. Jack sits at a table, his lunch untouched as he stares out the window. Sam walks in, carrying a coffee cup, and notices Jack's distracted expression. Sam, hey, you okay? You seem off. Jack forces a smile, but it doesn't quite reach his eyes. Jack, yeah, just thinking about my past, you know? It's hard to leave it behind. Sam, I hear you, but you're here now. You've got a fresh start. That's what matters. Jack looks at Sam, the weight of his past still heavy on him. Jack, I don't know, Sam. I keep wondering if I'll always be that guy just one mistake away from losing everything again. Sam, it's not about the mistakes, Jack. It's about how you get up after falling. And you've been getting up. Every day. Jack nods slowly, appreciating Sam's words, though still unsure. Jack takes a walk through a nearby park during his lunch break. He watches families and couples enjoying the sunny afternoon, his mind racing. He pauses near a bench, taking a deep breath. The sound of children laughing fills the air, pulling him from his thoughts. Suddenly, he hears a voice behind him. Charles! Jack! Jack turns to see Charles walking toward him, hands in his pockets. He's dressed casually, more relaxed than usual. Jack! Mr. Charles. What are you doing here? Charles shrugs, taking a seat on the bench next to Jack. "Charles, just getting some air. Thought I'd check in on how you're doing." Jack looks at him, a mix of gratitude and uncertainty in his expression. "Jack, I'm doing all right. But it's hard, you know? Sometimes I feel like I don't belong in a place like this. Like I'm faking it." Charles chuckles softly, shaking his head. "Charles, you're not faking anything. You've earned your place here. That's something you should be proud of." Jack sighs, looking away as he watches a father tossing a ball to his son. "Jack, it's just hard to let go of everything that happened. I can't help but wonder if I'm just pretending." Charles watches him for a moment, considering his words carefully. "Charles, let me tell you something, Jack. No one can change the past, but you can shape your future. And if you keep working hard, you'll have something to be proud of. Don't sell yourself short." Jack nods, feeling a flicker of hope. "Jack, thanks, Charles. I needed to hear that. Charles, anytime. And remember, you're not alone in this. We're a team." Jack is back at work, but today there's a noticeable change in his demeanor. He walks with more purpose, his head held higher as he interacts with colleagues. Sam notices from across the room and smiles. "Sam, look at you, Jack. You're finally starting to believe it, huh?" Jack grins, a spark in his eyes. "Jack, I think I am." Charles watches through his office window, his gaze focused on Jack as he moves confidently around the office. A faint smile tugs at Charles's lips as he turns back to his paperwork. He picks up his phone and dials a number. "Charles, into phone. Amelia, it's happening." Jack's turning things around. He's not the same guy who walked through our door. He's becoming someone better. "Amelia." Softly pleased. "I knew he would." Charles leans back in his chair, watching Jack from a distance, knowing that he had made the right choice. The sleek glass walls of the high-rise offer a breathtaking view of the city below. Jack stands at the center of the polished conference room, his posture confident, exuding a sense of authority he never thought he'd achieve. The clients, a well-dressed group of executives, nod approvingly as they shake hands with him, impressed by the presentation and deal he's managed to close. Charles, his mentor, watches from the side, a small but proud smile curling at the corners of his lips. He leans slightly against the wall, arms crossed, taking in the scene with satisfaction. He had been the one to recognize Jack's potential early on, pushing him beyond his limits, believing in him when Jack doubted himself. As the meeting wraps up, the clients leave with a handshake and a promise to continue the partnership. Jack stands for a moment, staring at the door, a deep breath of relief escaping his chest. Charles approaches him, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "You did well today, Jack. This is just the beginning." His voice is gruff, but there's a warmth to it. Jack glances up, his eyes gleaming with newfound confidence. "I couldn't have done it without you, Charles. You pushed me to step up, even when I wasn't sure I was ready." Charles chuckles softly. "You were ready long before you knew it. The key is knowing how to harness that potential. And you did exactly that today." They share a moment of camaraderie, the city skyline gleaming behind them. Jack's phone buzzes in his pocket, pulling him back to reality. It's a reminder that while this victory is sweet, there's still a mountain to climb. Jack looks at Charles one last time. "What's next?" Charles raises an eyebrow. "Next? We keep climbing. This deal was just the first step, my friend." Jack nods, a spark of determination in his eyes. The journey ahead is challenging, but now he knows he has what it takes to face it. And with Charles by his side, there's nothing stopping him. The sun begins to set, casting a golden glow through the tall windows. The office feels quieter now, as the day winds down and the last of the staff trickle out, leaving Jack and Charles alone in the spacious conference room. Jack sits at the head of the long glass table, reviewing the contract documents one last time. His eyes skim over the fine print, a focused expression on his face. He's not just looking at the words anymore. He's analyzing the bigger picture, envisioning the impact this deal will have on the company and his future. Charles watches him from the doorway, his arms crossed. He can see the shift in Jack. There's a hunger in him now, one that wasn't there before. "You're thinking about the next move already, aren't you?" Charles asks, stepping into the room. Jack looks up, his gaze sharp and thoughtful. "Yeah, this deal is a big win, but it's not the end. It's just the start of something bigger. I can feel it." Charles smirks, walking over to the table and sitting across from Jack. "I knew you'd get there eventually. You're starting to see it, aren't you? The way this game works. It's not about what you achieve today. It's about positioning yourself for what's coming next. Jack leans back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. You mean playing the long game? Charles nods. Exactly. And sometimes, that means taking risks, taking on projects others might shy away from. There's no growth without risk, Jack. Jack looks down at the contract one more time. His mind races, visions of the future flashing before him. I'm ready for that. I want to be more than just a good salesman or manager. I want to lead to change things. Charles leans forward, studying Jack with an intensity that matches his own. Leadership is earned. You've got the ambition, Jack, but you've got to prove you can carry the weight of it. The pressure's only going to get worse from here. Jack meets his gaze with a newfound resolve. I'm ready. I want to prove it to myself, to everyone. Charles nods slowly, almost approvingly. Good. But remember, it's not all about the deal-making. It's about the people you bring with you along the way. You can't lead alone. Jack stands up, walking to the window, his eyes lost in the horizon. The city sprawls out before him, endless and full of potential. I won't. I know who I need by my side. Charles rises and stands beside him. For a moment, they both just look out at the city in silence, the weight of the future settling in. You're going to need more than just me to get to the top, Charles says quietly. But when you're ready, I'll be here. Jack turns to him, his eyes resolute. I won't let you down. With that, they both turn to face the challenges ahead, knowing that the path to greatness is steep, but it's one they're ready to climb together. The faint hum of the city outside barely audible. Charles leans back in his leather chair, his eyes fixed on Jack as he takes a sip from his glass. Charles, I always knew you had it in you. Jack, I just needed someone to believe in me. Jack sets his glass down on the polished wood of the desk, the weight of the words hanging in the air. There's a silent understanding between them, a bond forged through years of hard work, struggle, and shared ambition. Charles watches him carefully, his expression unreadable. Charles, what will you do with it now? Jack hesitates, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. It's not the first time he's been asked that question, but now it feels different. The weight of success, of getting what he's always wanted, feels heavier than he imagined. Jack, I've spent my whole life chasing something. Maybe now it's time to find out what it really means. Charles raises an eyebrow, intrigued by Jack's words. He's seen Jack rise from nothing, driven by an unyielding need to prove himself. But something in Jack's tone suggests that the fire inside him is no longer about winning, it's about something deeper. Charles, you've got it now. Don't lose sight of what you're after. Jack nods, but there's something in his eyes that speaks of more than just ambition, something he hasn't quite figured out yet. He picks up his glass again, swirling the amber liquid thoughtfully. Jack, maybe. It's time to stop running from who I really am. The words hit harder than either of them expected. Jack's been running from something, maybe from the man he thought he should be, or the one he was too afraid to become. The tension in the room thickens. Charles, and who is that, Jack? Jack looks up, meeting Charles's gaze with a new resolve. Jack, I'm still figuring it out, but I'm done waiting for someone else to tell me. The two men sit in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling between them. Charles looks at Jack, something like pride flickering in his eyes. Charles, then let's see where this new path takes you. They toast again, this time with the unspoken understanding that Jack is no longer just the man Charles believed in. He's becoming someone else, someone who will define his own destiny. The night has deepened, and the room is now shrouded in shadows, lit only by the soft glow of the desk lamp. Charles leans forward, studying Jack, his fingers tapping thoughtfully on the rim of his glass. The air is charged with a new energy, one that feels like the start of something monumental. Charles, you've made it this far, but don't forget that the real test is just beginning. Jack's brow furrows slightly as he meets Charles's gaze. The words are sharp, a reminder of the relentless journey ahead. The weight of success, of taking the next step, isn't just about having the right connections or the right timing, it's about what you do with the power once it's in your hands. Jack, I'm not scared of the test. I'm scared of failing before I even try. Charles leans back again, a small smirk playing on his lips. Charles, you've already tried, Jack. That's why you're sitting here with me right now. Jack exhales, the tension in his shoulders releasing for the first time in a long while. It's a moment of vulnerability, a rare crack in the facade he's built over the years. Jack, I thought I needed to prove something to everyone. But maybe I needed to prove it to myself. Charles considers this, nodding slowly. Charles, proving things to yourself is the hardest part. It's the difference between becoming something greater and just staying where you are. Jack takes a long sip, his thoughts swirling with the possibilities ahead. He's no longer the person he was when he first walked into this office. There's a new sense of purpose in him, a spark he hasn't quite figured out how to fully embrace yet, but he feels it a shift, an awakening. The silence between them deepens, and for a long moment neither speaks. The conversation hangs in the air like the last note of a symphony, lingering with weight and meaning. Jack, for all the advice, I never really asked you why you decided to invest in me. Charles raises an eyebrow, surprised by the question. It's been a long time since anyone had dared to ask him such a direct question, especially someone like Jack. Charles, I saw potential. But more than that, I saw someone who could make their own choices. You weren't the typical person, Jack. You didn't follow the rules, and that intrigued me. Jack leans in, curiosity burning in his eyes. Jack, and what happens when someone like me has all the power? Charles's eyes flicker with something unreadable. It's as if he's contemplating a thought he's never shared with anyone before. Finally, he speaks. Charles, they have two choices. They can use it to build something great, or they can tear everything down. The difference lies in who they choose to become once they have the power to do either. Jack's jaw tightens, the weight of those words settling on his chest. The room feels colder now, the night stretching out before them like an uncharted road. Jack, I don't want to tear anything down, but I won't let fear control me anymore either. Charles smiles, a glimmer of approval in his eyes. Charles, that's what I wanted to hear. Now, what are you going to do with it? Jack rises from his chair, determination replacing the uncertainty. He looks down at Charles, a new fire in his gaze. Jack, I'm going to build something that means something that's mine. Charles nods, impressed. Charles, then let's see where this path leads. But remember, Jack, what you do next is more important than anything you've done before. Jack walks toward the door, his steps steady and sure. As he opens it, he glances back over his shoulder. Jack, I won't forget it, Charles. I won't forget what I'm fighting for. With that, he leaves the office, stepping into the unknown. The door clicks shut behind him, but the path ahead is wide open, a road that Jack is ready to navigate on his own terms. The evening was filled with anticipation as the grand ballroom sparkled with light. Jack, standing at the podium in his sharp tuxedo, glanced over at Charles, who was seated at the front table, a quiet figure among the crowd. His heart swelled with gratitude as he began his speech, his voice steady despite the emotion running through him. Jack, if it wasn't for Charles, I wouldn't be here today. He took me in when no one else would, showed me kindness when the world seemed cold. He gave me a second chance, and now it's my turn to give back. The room fell silent, every ear tuned to Jack's words. Charles shifted in his seat, a smile tugging at his lips as he caught Jack's gaze. There was no mistaking the bond they shared, a deep-rooted friendship built on trust, loyalty, and gratitude. The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing off the walls of the ballroom. Jack felt a lump form in his throat, but he pushed it down, focusing on the task at hand. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a check. As he walked across the stage, he handed it to Charles with a simple but heartfelt gesture. Jack, this is for the charity, for all the people who need help. It's because of you, Charles, that I learned the importance of giving. Let's make sure no one else feels alone like I once did. Charles took the check, his eyes glistening with a mix of surprise and pride. He had never expected such a gesture, especially from Jack, who had come so far since those dark days. The homeless charity had been his passion, and to see it flourish through Jack's support meant everything. The guests erupted into applause once again, but this time, Jack's focus wasn't on the crowd. It was on Charles, the man who had saved his life in more ways than one. Charles stood up, his voice shaking slightly as he addressed the room. Charles, I never expected this. Jack, I've always believed in you, but I never thought you'd find your way to this point. You've come a long way, my friend. I'm proud of you, and I know the people we helped tonight will be forever grateful for your kindness. As the night wore on, the donations poured in, and the evening became a symbol of hope, of redemption, of friendship, and of the power of giving. Jack had come a long way from the person he once was. And in that moment, he realized that the most important thing in life wasn't success or wealth, it was the ability to make a difference. And with Charles by his side, he knew they would continue to make an impact, one life at a time. As the evening unfolded, the atmosphere in the ballroom shifted from formal to intimate. Guests mingled, exchanging stories of their own journeys, while the soft strains of a live band played in the background. Jack and Charles stood together, their quiet conversation continuing from the stage. "Jack, when I first met you, I had no idea how much I needed someone like you in my life. I thought I could do it all on my own, but you showed me a different path." Charles chuckled softly, his eyes reflecting years of wisdom. "Charles, I didn't do it alone, Jack. You did the hard work. You made the choice to turn things around. I was just there to point you in the right direction." Jack smiled, shaking his head. "Jack, you were more than just a guide. You were my lifeline when everything seemed impossible. You believed in me when I couldn't even believe in myself." As they spoke, a woman approached them, a former recipient of the charity. Her eyes were filled with gratitude, and she clutched a small envelope in her hands. "Woman, excuse me, Mr. Jack. Charles, I just wanted to thank you both. I was homeless, but thanks to the work you do, I have a roof over my head now, and I'm starting a new job next week. I don't think I would have made it without this charity." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and Jack could see the emotion in her eyes. The weight of the impact they had made together was suddenly so real, so tangible. The reality of their work was right in front of him. "Jack, thank you for sharing that with us." He paused, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's stories like yours that keep us going. We're all in this together, and we'll keep fighting to make sure no one has to feel alone again." The woman nodded, her tears of gratitude a silent testament to the difference they were making. As she left, Charles turned to Jack, a knowing smile on his face. "Charles, this is why we do it, Jack. This is why we keep going, even when it feels like the odds are stacked against us. People like her, she's why you're here tonight." Jack looked out over the crowd, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what he had been searching for: purpose, connection, and the chance to give back. For the first time in a long time, he realized that he wasn't just chasing success or approval anymore. He was chasing something that truly mattered. "Jack, you're right. I've spent so long trying to prove something to the world, but this is what's worth fighting for. This is where I'm meant to be." Charles clapped Jack on the back, his eyes shining with pride. "Charles, I knew you'd get there. And now, together, we'll make sure there are more stories like hers. More people finding hope and starting over." Jack and Charles exchanged knowing glances, their bond stronger than ever. They weren't just friends anymore, they were partners in something far greater than themselves, working together to build a brighter future, one step at a time. And for Jack, as the evening drew to a close, it was clear that this was only the beginning of a journey that would transform not just his life, but the lives of many others. Jack sips his whiskey, eyes lost in the twinkling skyline. The hum of the city below is a constant reminder of the world he used to be a part of. His phone buzzes on the table, but he doesn't reach for it. Instead, he runs his fingers over the smooth surface of his glass, reflecting on the past. "I thought I had it all. Power, wealth, success. But none of that mattered when I hit rock bottom. It wasn't the shiny cars or fancy parties that defined me, it was the people I chose to leave behind." He leans back, his eyes glancing toward the small park across the street where children play during the day. There's something peaceful about it now, something real. Jack's younger self strides through a bustling office, a high-powered corporate deal unfolding. He's sharp, confident, and surrounded by colleagues. But in the background, there's a woman, Elena, who catches his eye. She's not like the others. She's gentle, a quiet presence among the noise. He dismisses her at first. Too different. Too unassuming. "Jack, I never noticed Elena back then. She was always in the shadows, doing the work that no one wanted to do. I ignored her, took her kindness for granted." Jack looks away from the park, his expression turning somber. He takes another sip of his drink, then stands and walks inside. "Jack, I didn't see it until it was too late. It took losing everything to realize what I had, and by then Elena was gone." Jack and Elena have an argument. She's upset. He's distracted, too focused on business. The words exchanged are harsh, but he doesn't care until she walks out, leaving him alone in his office, swallowed by the noise of unanswered emails and unsatisfied ambitions. Jack's gaze shifts to the doorway, as though waiting for something or someone to walk in. He sets the glass down and moves to the window, gazing out. "Jack, I thought I'd find happiness through the deal, through the numbers. But it wasn't enough. It never was. Happiness wasn't something I could buy. A handwritten letter sits on the desk in Jack's office, signed by Elena. He's sitting there, reading it over and over, her words clear in his mind. She had offered him an escape, a chance to live simply, to live honestly, but he was too caught up in his world to see it. The letter now sits in a drawer, unopened for years. Jack pulls the drawer open and retrieves the letter. It's yellowed with age, edges slightly curled. As he reads her words once again, his fingers tremble. Jack, sometimes the smallest act of kindness is the one that changes everything. But it's too late now to undo what I've done. The room feels heavy. Jack stands up, walks to the balcony, and stares at the city. He thinks of Elena, her soft voice, her warm smile. A choice was made. A life was lost. But Jack knows something now. A new chapter is waiting, and this time he won't make the same mistakes. Jack, I'm not sure if I can ever make up for what I lost, but I have to try. There's still time to change. And sometimes that's all we need. Jack walks back into the apartment, grabbing his coat. The night is still young, and for the first time in a long time, he has a sense of purpose. Jack pulls on his coat, taking a deep breath before stepping toward the door. He hesitates for a moment, staring at the phone once more. This time, he picks it up and dials the number he's been avoiding for years. The phone rings, echoing in the quiet of the apartment. His heart beats faster with each passing second. He nearly hangs up, but then he hears a familiar voice on the other end. Elena. Hello. There's a long pause. Jack swallows, unsure of what to say. Her voice feels like a lifeline, a connection to a past he had long buried. Jack. Elena, it's Jack. I didn't think you'd still be. Elena. Interrupting. Jack. It's been a long time. Her voice is calm, steady, but there's a trace of hurt, of history woven into those words. He's not sure what to expect, but he can feel the distance between them, the years of silence hanging in the air. Jack. I know. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I never understood how much you meant to me until it was too late. There's a long silence. Jack's chest tightens, every second dragging on as he waits for her response. Then she speaks softly, almost too quietly to hear. Elena, you were always too focused on the wrong things, Jack. I tried to make you see it. I thought if I stayed, if I waited, maybe you'd change. Jack, I didn't change, Elena. But I am now. I've lost everything, and it's only now that I realize what really matters. I was blind before, but I'm not anymore. Elena. Sighing. It's not that simple. Jack. I know it's not. But I want to try. I need to try, even if it means starting from the very beginning. Elena. Jack. She pauses, clearly weighing her words. I'm not the same person I was back then either. I've changed too. And I don't know if I can just pick up where we left off. Jack feels a pang of regret, but there's something in her voice, something soft and hesitant that gives him hope. He takes a deep breath, knowing this conversation is just the start of something bigger. Jack, I don't expect things to go back to how they were. But I want to show you that I'm different now, that I can be the man you deserve. Please, Elena, let me try. There's another silence, but it feels less heavy now. Her voice, when it finally comes, is filled with uncertainty, but there's a flicker of warmth in it. Elena. All right, Jack. We'll see. But I'm not making any promises. Jack. I don't need promises. Just a chance. He hangs up, his heart still racing. The weight of the moment hangs heavy, but for the first time in a long time, Jack feels a spark of hope. He's taking a risk, but it's a risk worth taking. Jack walks through the bustling streets, his mind focused, his steps purposeful. He has a plan now. He's not sure where it will lead, but for the first time in years, he feels like he's headed in the right direction. His phone buzzes. It's Elena, one text message. Elena, how about coffee? 2 p.m. at the old cafe. Jack smiles. It's not much, but it's a start. He types a quick reply. Text Jack. I'll be there. The door opens and Elena walks in. She looks different, more confident, her eyes a little softer than he remembers. Jack stands as she approaches, his heart pounding in his chest. Elena, you look, well. Jack, I've been trying. They both sit, the table between them an unspoken reminder of the distance that has passed. But the air isn't as tense as it used to be. There's a sense of calm between them now, fragile, but real. Elena, so, how's life been? Jack, it's been hard, but I'm learning. It's taken me losing everything to see what really matters. Elena nods, her gaze thoughtful. Elena, and what matters to you now? Jack looks at her, his expression earnest. Jack, you. And the chance to prove I can be better. Not just for me, but for us. She doesn't reply immediately, but Jack can see the walls she's built start to crumble just a little. It's not forgiveness, not yet, but it's the beginning of something real. And for the first time in a long while, Jack feels like he's exactly where he needs to be.